it's kind of QVC style. You know, a lot of people might know what the QVC style stuff is, where you have somebody showcasing the product. They'll put the top on, or they'll put the dress on. They'll explain to you how it fits. You may have another model or two come out in a different size, so somebody can see a different size. A lot of people, certainly a lot of ladies in the boutique world, can register with that. You know, it's a little bit easier to see somebody who's more similar to you, right? So as a brand or as a company, if you can zero in on that, you know, then you can reap the benefits. You could probably make some pretty good sales.
Hey, Modern Commerce, welcome back. You're here, as always, with Casey and John. Today, we're continuing on with our How to Build a Brand series. We've got another great interview lined up, but I'm going to go ahead and let John tell us how he's doing and explain who our guest is going to be today. John, take it away, my man.
Thank you, man. Like I'm doing good. I am excited to be here. I'm excited to be here with Alan Jernigan of Blushing Brunette Boutique. Started the brand with his wife, and you know, I actually am excited about this one, Casey, because this is gonna hit home for us. This is like a weird sub niche of the e-com world that we're going to talk about today, and it's a great sub niche, right? It's very profitable. They're awesome brands, but boutiques, clothing boutiques specifically, and we're even going to get into a little live selling. Live selling is sort of this like hot topic in e-commerce right now, but like in the boutique world, it's not new, right? Like we've been doing it's been going on for a while, and it's funny. Casey and I have, like, one of our biggest successes, biggest case studies early on in the agency was helping grow a boutique that did live selling. So like when we first talked, I was like, oh, you live sell, like. There's so few people in the e-com world who like get it, right? So yeah, Alan, excited to have you here. Give us a little bit of your background. Tell us a little bit about the brand background, how you guys got started, all that kind of stuff.
Sure, man. Yeah. So we just celebrated 5 years. Started back in 2017. We do actually have a couple of storefronts, but predominantly everything's online e-commerce. We really, at first starting out, we were a little bit more brick and mortar. Didn't have as many online sales, and right before COVID area, that's flipped. We're like 90-10 with mostly everything happening online. Live selling was a big part of that back in the day. Then we kind of tailed off on it, and now we're looking at ramping it back up. Just to speak to that point there, it's tricky, right? You see a lot of folks that you don't really see a whole lot of. You see a little bit of fashion in the e-com world, but not really centered around like the boutique area. You don't see a whole lot of that, at least in the D2C talk. You don't get a whole lot of it, but there's a lot of similar things. Some things are a little bit different. You know, we had talked about some different ad things as far as like statics versus videos. Sometimes with our brand or with other brands that are similar, you can run a static image as opposed to and get good results as opposed to a dressed up video or whatnot. But that's pretty much the gist of it, man. We've been growing year over year. We're pumping out pretty solid numbers. So we're just kind of trying to do our thing.
Cool, yeah. And tell me, you guys have a team like with the brick and mortar stores and stuff like that over the last few years. So I know that let's rewind. Let's go back to 2019. Right, so that we can go through, what were you doing, right? Like how things were going, and then how you had to change with COVID, right? Because we were talking off screen, and before 2020, most of your guys' sales were brick and mortar.
Yeah. So I would say we kind of had a boat built for the flood. So I was already geared to shifting to more online, anyways, and we were doing a fair amount. I'd say. At that time, we were about 80-20, and now we're just predominantly online. But we're 80-20 retail, with a lot of our sales coming in to the storefronts, and a lot of the online sales was still kind of a local presence as well. So it was all that was kind of pushed by the actual brick and mortar shops. 2019, so I'm of the mindset, I think that we kind of need to change this anyways. COVID hits. Boom, all of a sudden we're making zero sales inside those stores. So we had to figure out a way to sell stuff, right? The shops are not open. We've got to sell stuff online. we were ready. We were already on Facebook and pretty much everywhere. We had a relatively decent presence, not what we are now, but we were ready, man. COVID hit, we just kind of blew up. Sales just started happening.
Casey, you are an absolute beast right now. You're churning out so many creatives across multiple brands. What is it that is so hard about producing such a high volume of creatives? Why can't more brands do it?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I would say if you're doing it the right way, of course, you should be always analyzing your past ads. You know, the things you've already churned out, your most recent test group that you've put out, and that should inform your next round of creation, not just go all willy nilly about it. So I would say that's why it's difficult to speed up that process, is because it's always kind of a two-pronged approach of analyzing and creation, really.
So how is it that you are able to do that across like 12 to 15 accounts?
Yeah, I mean, it does get pretty wild, but honestly, when I use Pencil, it's not as bad. Pencil is a tool that I use. It's got AI that'll help determine what my best ads are. It'll even break it down into the best elements of those ads. And in that platform, it'll automatically generate new ads for me to launch, and I can push them live straight from the platform into Facebook, IG. It also works great for other platforms as well, like TikTok, whatever you're on, really. If you sound like me and you're always in the weeds with your creatives, you need a little bit more analytics. You just need some help with new creation. You need things to be sped up a little bit. Use our promo code. Go to trypencil.com, use promo code ModCom15. You'll save 15% off on any paid plan. You sure can start with a free plan, John. I mean, hey, I'll recommend it. Go ahead and try it for free. But once you do, we're pretty confident you're going to want to switch to a paid plan anyway. So don't forget, you can use that promo code ModCom15 at trypencil.com. One more time, that's trypencil.com, ModCom15. Save 15% off any paid plan they have there. And back to the show.
Yeah. So let's explain the business model a little bit,
Sure.
right? Because we get a lot of different kinds of e-commerce businesses on here, right? Like people who source product, people who are vertically integrated, they make their own products. You guys are a clothing brand, right? Like at your core, you're kind of a women's clothing brand. The way that you source is the same way most clothing brands source, right?
Yep. Yeah, we work with a few different vendors. Some of our stuff is exclusive, some of it is not. Some of it you can find in other boutiques, some of it you can find in other places. Pretty much, that's very similar to a lot of other fashion brands.
Right. Yeah, that's not uncommon. So, the title of this series is how to build like a blank kind of brand, right? So here we're talking about how to build an apparel brand, how to build a boutique. But I actually think that the way that apparel is done, there's two ways, right? So, and it's funny, we actually are recording another episode with another apparel brand, I think later today, that is what I'll call category one. And category one is you've disrupted a certain product category, or like pants, right? Like you have like a new kind of jean, or a new kind of pants that's like, so that's very similar to a disruptor brand in e-commerce, just period, right? And you're mainly focused really kind of around that one thing. And a lot of apparel brands start out that way, and then they evolve into like many, many other product categories. Chubbies is a great example, right? Like they started out by saying like, hey, dudes don't have to wear long shorts. Dudes can wear short shorts, right? And now there are lots of things, right? Like lots of apparel products. So that's kind of way number one, is where it's like we're really focusing on disrupting a category. And in that case, then your stuff is exclusive, right? And you're focused on why try these shorts? Why buy these shorts? Why buy this shirt? Whereas, or category two is you, like how you're doing apparel, where you're saying, look, we don't care that much about what the products are, right? Like what we care about is our market, So if our market that we serve is kind of, millennial, older half millennial women, we care about what they care about, right? So if they're into, this kind of blouse right now, that's what we're into. If they're into one-piece swimsuits right now, that's what we're into. If they're into jeans, that's what we're into. If they're into joggers, that's what we're into, right? So you're really kind of doing more what people might call fast fashion, and working with suppliers where like you said, some of the stuff is exclusive.
Sure.
But in fast fashion, it's not so important that it's exclusive. It's more important, at least as I see it, that you guys have your fingers on the pulse of the trend. And that's, in my opinion, in a world where you don't have any exclusivity with your supplier or your suppliers, anyone else could really cut in and buy the same stuff. How do you win, right? Like anyone else can get the same stuff. How do you win?
You got to build a brand, right? So that was kind of the, to take it back a little bit, when we were starting out, the whole thing, whether it was online or in store, it was, we want to be able to put it anywhere, right? So if we're going to open up retail shops, we want to be able to put those everywhere and not just be a localized little shell of oh, that's your local boutique or whatnot, right? So from the beginning, we already knew we were going to take. I wanted to take this and I want to be able to put it everywhere. And how do you do that? You gotta build a brand.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a little bit tougher to do when you got a lot of people selling the same things as you. But if you zero in on who your customer is and you can speak to them, I think you can find success doing that. And I think that's something that we have done, is we've been able. I like to use my wife as an example. She is the blushing brunette, whatnot. I'm Mr. Blushing Brunette, but it's really easy for me to address the market, because who I'm selling to is my wife, is the girls that work for us. I have a younger daughter, so it's really easy for me. A lot of people might think, well, it's a guy, which obviously have a lot of guys in the fashion industry, but it's really easy for me to zero in on who I'm selling to because they're all around me, right? And that's enabled us to build what we've got, where we've got to today.
Yeah, you're avatar adjacent. So let's get into some of the like really clear kind of tactics of, because I think that's what a lot of people say is like, it's about knowing your customers. It's about, well, what does that look like, in the fashion world? And let's transition this conversation into live selling. So I don't know the exact timeline, right? But I know you guys kick off, you're primarily brick and mortar. By 2019, you're moving more online, so that by 2020 you're ready. And I think your foray into online started with live selling, correct?
Yeah. You're right on it.
Explain what the live selling process is, just for anyone who doesn't know.
Sure. All right. So it's predominantly, I think, I can't say for sure, but I think it really started in like Facebook groups where you would have ladies or people get on a live sale, and it's kind of QVC style. A lot of people might know what the QVC style stuff is, where you have somebody showcasing the product. They'll put the top on, or they'll put the dress on. They'll explain to you how it fits. You may have another model or two come out in a different size, so somebody could see a different size. You may have a lady wearing a small, medium, large, XL, so different people can see, or you can see different people in the different sizes, where maybe you couldn't visualize yourself in the size small. You can see somebody in maybe you wear an XL and you see somebody in an XL, you have a better idea of what that would look like on you. And I think a lot of people, certainly a lot of ladies in the boutique world, can register with that. It's a little bit easier to see somebody who's more similar to you, right? So as a brand or as a company, if you can zero in on that, then you can reap the benefits. You could probably make some pretty good sales. And we were able to do that when we started out. We had a really solid Facebook group going, and we've been able to grow that a little bit too. And when that happens, you kind of build a little bit of a community as well. Definitely, if you're doing it in a local area, you start to talk to these people on a regular basis. You become friends with them. Strangers become friends, and it just grows. And then all of a sudden, one thing that you hear a lot about. Paid ads and whatnot, and they're great and we love them. But I like to say one of the best forms of marketing is word of mouth, right? So if we can get somebody telling somebody else about who we are, we're winning.
Right. Yeah, no, and so yeah, I mean, specifically, what it looks like in D2C e-commerce boutique apparel, right? And live selling might look a little different in different forms, but it's the QVC model, right? Or the shopping network, right? Where there's just products on there all day and people sitting there, standing there selling them. But in e-commerce, what it looks like is usually a brand co-founder, or brand owner, CEO, somebody like that, getting on. And when you talk about like, hey, you got to build a brand that people identify with and love, oftentimes it becomes as much in D2C in e-commerce. It becomes as much that person, as anything,
Yeah.
right? So it was your wife initially who was
Right.
selling. Your wife is the avatar. So those people who are like her, identified with her, she comes on and she's like, yeah, this one actually, I would size up in this one. It fits a little bit small, you know, or I would size down in this one if it's a little big. I don't know if I got that reversed or not, but right. And so it's part selling and part just endearing herself. And then the thing is, like you said, you get to know some of these people. Some people will come on. I've experienced brands live, so they'll go live every night, every single night.
Yep.
And some people will come on and buy stuff from them every single night. I mean, talk about building LTV. Some of the LTVs for the, let's say, top 10% of customers for boutiques through, like you could never
crazy. Yeah,
never
really.
imagine how much greater it is than their initial order value. They'll come on and buy every night, and you can't help but get to know them, because the mechanism is usually, like at least on Facebook live selling,
you're nailing it.
usually, hey, comment sold. Hey, blue t-shirt, comment sold in your size.
Yep.
We have 2 in each size available, right?
Yep.
So there's this kind of there's
a sense of urgency. It pushes the sense of urgency. You know, hey, we're if you don't buy it now, we're going to sell out. So people jump on and they buy it.
And they buy it. It's like, I was kind of saying this, sometimes some of their products that like aren't as good at hits, if they could get the quantity right, they could still sell it, because I'm like, it's just enough time to make a bad decision.
Just enough time, drive a sense of urgency. You know, you can play with the price, maybe put it on sale, drop it down a little bit, and they'll be gone before you know it. It's a really good mechanism. Yeah.
So, you know, if people get on, they buy every week, every night, and they're commenting, like you notice those people, and a lot, you know, depending on what tools you use, you're going to end up, someone on your team, customer service, you're going to end up talking to that person to like collect their payment and all of that, right?
Yeah.
So you end up kind of building this community of people who you actually know. And you get, I think more than any other business I've seen, people who do live selling really understand their customers, really understand their customers, in e-commerce at least.
Yeah, I think so. And the tricky thing is well, how do you scale that? You can drive people to it. What we've found, it's kind of I think there's a certain audience that likes it and that really gets into it, and then there's some that don't, and that's just really, you know, what's your preferred method of shopping or engaging with a company or a brand. And that's where we did kind of hit a little bit of a roadblock, where I think we were selling a whole, like you said, a lot to a lot of the same people. And let's slow down a little bit for us, but we're actually looking at the moment to bringing it back around and really trying to crank it back up.
So yeah, let's hit on that really quick, because I actually am of the belief, as much as I just saw live selling like in Casey and I mean, just to kind of give the quick case study here, we worked with a brand that did it, similar type of brand, women's clothing boutique. And we just saw, hey, like they got a fire going, like people love this. And we saw how to throw fuel on the fire. And it purely was all of our paid ads. We didn't ever advertise clothes. All of our paid ads were just geared toward building their SMS list, because they texted people every time they were live. Yeah. And their lives went from like 100 people to like 1,000 people pretty quickly. And then it's more people becoming endeared to them, right? And that got bigger. And yeah, not all of those 1,000 people stick around. Some of them are like, what is this? This is stupid, right? But like, stick, some of them. And like, it's kind of fast, right? It's like blue t-shirt, you know, we have 2 of each size, comment blue t-shirt and your size. Someone might be like, I don't know, I kind of like it. Blue t-shirt large, sold, you know? And then once you've bought once, it's like a little addicting.
Yeah, it's kind of like gamified, right? So it makes it fun, makes it fun to shop. And I mean, and people already like shopping, so and you make it even more fun. Why not?
Right. Yeah. And they become endeared. But there is a bottleneck, and that is, how do you scale this? Now, I do think I have some thoughts. I think that many live sellers scale by going live more often. You can do that. I actually think that where a lot of live sellers miss, and I'd be interested in your take on this, as you've gotten away from it, become more experienced in e-commerce, and you're looking to come back to it, there are 2 really big things. One, the best live seller is almost always the owner, right? Yeah. And so what do you like? Okay, if you go live every night, like what, do they not get a vacation? You know, that's tough. That is tough, right?
Good point, because that's exactly what that's almost exactly what we experienced, and it almost became a bandwidth issue, burnout. but then it's not the same when you put a different face in there.
Yeah.
You hit the nail on the head, and we kind of experienced that firsthand.
Right. You get success, you make it, but then you're like, I never even get to enjoy this money, you know?
Yeah.
So it's a tough one. And training some other people to do it is, I mean, they'll still sell. It won't be as good, you know? And so that's the thing I always say, if you're going to get into live selling, understand this, right? Like, they'll still sell, it won't be as good. Maybe you just accept that and say like, yeah, but that's the way that it has to scale. We have to have 4 or 5 girls who cycles through, so that we're not doing, you know, this thing where I'm tied to it every night or whatever.
And that's kind of the approach that we had started to take. And if we engage in it again, I think that's what we're going to do.
Yep. Yeah. And then the other side of it is, I mean, how do you sell more? Do you just have to be live for longer? Do you have to have more products? I think this is where a lot of live sellers miss, is they don't adapt their buying for their new audience size, right? So they keep buying the same size runs. And it is tricky because a lot of suppliers make you buy a size run of all sizes in the same quantity, right? So extra small, double XL, you got to buy 5 of each. And you're like, I don't want 5 double XLs. What am I going to do with those? But I think, so what a lot of live sellers, where I think they miss is they're like, well, how do I scale this? Do I go live longer? Do I go live more often? And it's like, honestly, I think you just got to buy up. Instead of buying 5 of each, you got to buy 10 of each. You got to buy 15 of each. And they're scared to do that because they know they're going to be sitting with inventory of those. So supplier terms is huge. And I don't know if you guys have navigated that, but yeah, I mean, talk about that a little bit, because that's logistical side stuff where I think this is what I've noticed, but I don't really know for sure.
No, you're right. That's I think there's always that fear, and even when you're not live selling, if I buy too many, am I going to end up stuck with this? And then we're sitting on it, and then what do I do? Well, I got to discount it, and then you don't make as much money, or you break even or whatnot. I think that you hit a good point right there. I mean, really, that's the gist of it. I think it plays on the fear of buying more, and a lot of people don't want to do that, or they're scared to do that, or maybe they do it and it doesn't work one time. But I think that is probably where you need to go, because as you grow, I mean, you want to hit the same items. You don't want to be on there for 3 hours doing it.
No,
maybe every now and then, but you're not going to do that on the in and out. That's not something that you're going to find longevity with, I don't think.
Right.
But we were kind of, like I said, we were still kind of learning too. We had found good ground, and then it seemed like, well, what do we do to grow it? And we had kind of hit a roadblock there.
Yeah, for sure. And I will just say that, you know, that problem of overbuying, you know, first of all, welcome to e-commerce. You know, that's just always a concern. And even further, if you're going to get into apparel, especially fast fashion apparel, that's the gig. Or footwear, you know, that's the gig, right? Look, how many size 15s do you buy? You know what I mean? Like, how many size 15s?
A lot of people don't quite get it. It's not the same as having 2 or 3 products that you can endlessly sell. It's a lot of different SKUs and limited sizes and that. And it can be tough. It can be really tough.
Demand planning for apparel fast fashion there's a whole other wrinkle that's very, very difficult compared. Demand planning is already difficult, right? I always call it demand guessing already. But yeah, that's the wrinkle. But yeah, so in your opinion, you know, you give me, because I have opinions on this. Everyone who watches the show knows I have opinions on everything. In your opinion, what kind of brands is live selling right for? What kind of brands is live selling not right for?
Good. Let's see. I mean, I definitely closed anything fashion wise. Apparel, you can do that pretty easily. That's pretty. I think a lot of accessory type products would be good. Maybe purses, jewelry, things of that nature. You can get on there and you can show, like, you know, bog bags are like really big right now. Maybe even something like a Yeti cooler or something to that extent. I've seen some people do really well with stuff like that, because you can get on there and maybe you got a limited supply or a limited edition of something, you know, Yeti cooler, for example, and you got a limited edition, and you're going to drive that sense of urgency like you would with a certain amount of clothes. I think people would eat that up.
Yeah,
those are kind of the things I would see working well. I mean, I wouldn't get on there trying to sell you know, like a CPG or some type of food or drink.
Yeah, or like a supplement.
Yeah. Maybe some kind of supplement. I don't think so though. I would say apparel is probably definitely your best bet.
I thought about this before, and so I think there's probably something to do with audience too. I mean, I will say safely, I'm gonna umbrella what you just said into, if your audience and your primary buyers are like, female age 25, and I'll say up, but like maybe let's cap 55, right? Like if
Yeah.
that's where your main buying demographic is, and you have a lot of SKUs, like you have a lot of stuff you can sell, that it's probably a fit. It's probably a fit.
Yeah.
And if you're over new, you get new product really often, right? So that describes fashion. But anybody, if you get new product often, you have a lot of stuff to sell, and that's who you sell to, it's probably a fit. You could probably do it and make, and it'd be good for you. What I've never been able to figure out is like, and I'm sure somebody's done it, but what it would look like for a brand like I don't know, like Yeti microphones, right? Or like a kind of more of a single SKU type thing. I don't know if it would work in like a male, demo. It might not. I've never seen it done. But like, I've had the idea of like, let's say you had like a kitchenware, thing, like maybe you only have like, oh, we have like knife sets and cutting boards. Well, it's going to be weird to be like, all right, knife set, cutting board, and then you're done being live. So that, I don't know, maybe you can do some kind of like cooking show where you live sold it. But I've never seen it that way. I mean, it would be worth a test.
If you could blend maybe some kind of like entertainment in there, like a show, because I think that's what a lot of people kind of view it as well. They're watching a show in a way. So maybe if you could blend some entertainment type in there, it could possibly work. But I think you hit the nail on the head. Who's primarily on there? It's probably the demographic that you said.
Yeah.
25 plus women, whereas a lot of dudes are not going to be spending a whole lot of time on Facebook watching somebody
try to sell them stuff. Yeah.
It might be tough.
I gotta jump in here, guys, because one thing pops into mind here. I know there's this whole new like sports cards like break kind of craze that's going on right now. So there are dudes, we don't even really get anything to like put on our bodies or anything. We're just like, oh, if I can get a little like square, one of my favorite players, that's what I'm gonna do. So we have our own lane too, but
yeah, it's true. Yeah, sports card break thing live. Yep, and guys watch podcasts live, right? Like it's not like they won't. I just haven't seen, other than the sports cards. Yeah, a lot of live selling on the like male demo.
Yeah, you're right. I haven't seen it either. But I could see something like that potentially. I mean, that could potentially go.
Maybe there's a promotion there for someone. Someone who's brave enough. Your fast fashion men's brand, try it and tell me how it goes.
Right. And I mean, maybe that's an untapped. There's a gap in the market right there.
Yeah, for sure.
They reap a lot of benefits.
I think we have a new business plan, fellas.
There we go. Yeah, we got it. We're starting a new brand. Cool. Well, let's move on from live selling a little bit. And so tell me how you evolved out of that. Like we kind of covered a little bit how, hey, it got to this point where it's like, hey, do we get to take a vacation? How does this work? How do we scale this up? And so you decided to move on from it. And give me a timeline. Were you still live selling in 2020? Like when COVID hit, I imagine that's when your business took off, like a lot of e-commerce businesses.
Yeah. So we were still doing it. We still did it a little bit going into COVID. It just wasn't, but it had kind of tailed down a little bit for us. Which you think coming back up, or right when COVID hit, kind of came back up a little bit. But as we were going into COVID, it was kind of starting to die off for us, and we weren't really, like I was saying earlier, the burnout, bandwidth wise, we were needing to address different things to continue growing, or what was bearing more fruit, I guess we could say. So and then COVID hits, and all of a sudden our retail stores are not doing as much for us, barely anything, or nothing at a certain point. So we really just said, okay, well, how are we got to make sure we're in front of our customers, in front of our people, our audience. Where are they at? And obviously during COVID, everybody was on their phone. So I want to be where they're at. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok. We're going to be there. If you're on your phone, we want you to see us. So that's what we did. We just hit the social platforms pretty hard. Still continue to do the live selling, just not as aggressively. And then all of a sudden the sales came.
Yeah. And you were mentioning off screen. I know that you were kind of saying like you don't want to share like top level numbers publicly, but you guys had like really great growth. You're already having really great growth, but you had really great growth through COVID, and that was shifting away from the live selling model and just doing paid traffic, Facebook, Instagram ads, Google ads, TikTok to site, and selling, selling clothes.
Yeah.
But just to be clear, you guys still do a lot of new product drops or new collection drops. Like that still happens pretty often, right?
For sure. Yeah. So we're dropping new stuff, and we're just trying to we're talking a little bit about earlier. We're just trying to really zero in on who our customer is, right? So if we're dropping new stuff that they like, we're going to make sales. If we're in touch with what's going on, if we're on trend with the people that we're trying to get in front of, we're going to make sales. And that's what we did. Like you rattled off everything. We were organic and paid. Any platform, Google, you name it, we were there, and it all worked out well for us.
Cool. So with the new collection drop, so I think one of the worries moving away from live selling is, hey, we have these incredible LTVs and they kind of hold us up. Makes it really easy to grow. When people are buying all the time, it's like every time I acquire one new customer, it's like worth so much to me, right? I imagine one of the worries moving away from a live selling model more to the traffic on site model is, or selling on site model is that LTV still going to remain strong? So yeah, I mean, speak to that. Doing acquiring customers on site and then doing the new collection drops. Have you guys still like continued to see as good of an LTV? Maybe not as good, but still good. Yeah.
Good, but not as good. Big difference in some cases. Like you said, the ladies that were doing the live selling. I mean, they were like crazy amounts. I mean, they would be there every time buying multiple things.
And hundreds of dollars every time sometimes.
Yeah, and kind of shifting away from that model, I think is where you come back to a little bit more of maybe a traditional e-commerce type selling standpoint, where you got to work a little bit harder to retain some people. You might win on the first one, but what happens then? Do they really like your stuff? You got to put something right back in front of them to make them buy again, and you can win doing that if you know your customer.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so moving through the timeline here, 2020, things are going really well. You guys moved heavily into both organic and paid and then 2021, let's talk about iOS, right? Because a couple things happened in 2021 that I think were struggles for e-commerce brands. One, we started competing for wallet share with other things. Again, travel opened back up, different things opened back up that, could take wallet share. That wasn't able we weren't even competing with, hey, should I go on vacation? Right. So people were just at home buying stuff during 2020. 2021, some stuff opened back up and we got hit with this iOS thing. So now you've hedged heavily into paid. How much did that affect you? Like, I mean, did you guys, like most e-commerce brands, experience a struggle with iOS?
For sure. Tough. And I almost want to say I hadn't even, I don't know if it's gotten better or worse as the time has went on, but 2021 may have even been tougher than 2020 because whenever the iOS updates happened. I mean, it just kind of changed, not necessarily what we were doing, but it because we lost some of that signal or that data. You had to really be in touch with what you're doing. And before, you might be able to just put a bunch of stuff out there, throw a bunch of stuff at the wall, and it would stick.
Mm-hmm.
When iOS came, you had to be better. It was separating, quote unquote, the men from the boys. You had to be good. You have to be good. There's still an opportunity there, but if you don't come prepared to play, you're going to lose. And we were ready to go, and still have been. It's been a little bit of a rocky ride, but we just kind of zeroed in on, okay, what's working, what's not, what's selling, what's not, and you just had to really be zeroed in on what was going good for you. And we managed it fairly well. We sell something that's a little bit more generic, so I think that's a little bit easier.
Right.
We do sell clothing to a pretty broad audience.
Yeah.
If you're selling, something more specific, I think you probably struggle to even more so.
Right. So certain brands, that maybe, let's talk, like luggage or really good like stroller, or anything that's like baby oriented. It's like, I got to catch people in like a really certain time period of life. it's gotten harder, right? And everyone kind of says, well, like broad targeting works. Facebook knows your audience. It's like, I mean, Facebook knows the audience for women's clothing better than they know the audience for like a stroller.
A certain type of pet owner, selling something specific to dogs, you got to be a little bit more.
I mean, they do know, right?
Right.
You still use broad, right? We've got brands like that, but it is hard, like there were brands that, like, I think a lot of like people in the D2C space sort of I don't know, frown upon anyone who is like, we were hurt by the targeting updates, and the loss of a lot of targeting, which I guess we're associating with iOS 14. It wasn't necessarily associated, but the loss of a lot of targeting, and lookalikes became watered down because their data was worse and stuff like that. And yeah, they get frowned upon, and I'm like, I don't know if we should really frown upon them when they're like a really niche, thing. And but yeah, I know I get it, and in clothing, a lot of times it is creatively, I won't say easy, but it's a lot about just like, it's more product focused than creative focused. It's like, hey, do you like this? Like, you just show it to them. Like, do you like that? No. How about this? No. How about that? Oh, yeah, they like that. Like, let's do more stuff with that product. You
don't have to have a super creative video that you spend, maybe $1 gazillion on, but it's, like you said, it's a little more, oh, I see that, oh, I like that, I buy that. Boom. It's not a $500 purchase. It's nothing that takes a whole lot of time to think about. It's no type of course or something like that where you might need to re-tap into somebody seeing it again. It's something that's a little bit easier. Oh, that's only 40, 50, 60 bucks. I like it, I'll buy it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like what you said about, like, kind of iOS 14 separated men from the boys, right, so to speak, or however you want to look at it. And I think it came in phases, right? Because it was like, phase one was like, are you with it and knowledgeable enough to, like, not just trust what the platform says, right? Because up to that point, we totally took for granted that most of us, like, just trusted what the platform said. And platforms probably were like, and in fact, I know, like, platforms were never 100% accurate, and I have brands where they were way off. But you actually could trust them pretty well, right? Like they were pretty close to on Facebook, especially.
Yeah, it was something that's pretty solid to go off of. You could make really good. You can make decisions and feel comfortable about it.
Exactly. And then
completely different now.
Are you savvy enough to just not trust what the platform said? Are you savvy enough to continue to figure out a way to figure out if Facebook, how well Facebook and Instagram is working for you at a high level, and continue to invest in it, even though you don't have this nice, clear data point that says, hey, look, 3 ROAS, yay, So yeah, I mean, that was, phase one. And then phase two is like, who could figure out, okay, well, now how do we compare Facebook to Google to TikTok, right? Like, how do we even compare, and so getting into MTA tools or getting more advanced using Google Analytics, that kind of stuff. And then phase three was like, how do you adapt creatively here when you have to make decisions with less data, right?
Yeah.
And like you said, you used to just be able to throw a bunch of stuff and you get quite a bit of data back and you can make good decisions with it. And now it's like, in a lot of cases, you can't throw as many things at the wall. So you got to be more intentional about it. But I guess I'm kind of going on a rant of like how I'm involved with us. But yeah, I'm interested. How have things gone, in terms of like the way that you've switched up your tactics and the way that you've switched up your strategy in running paid traffic since iOS 14?
So we have, you mentioned the lookalikes kind of dropped off, that for sure. We've seen that. We just pretty much kind of went to a little bit more structured and not as broad of testing and creative. Is kind of, like I said, we zeroed in on, well, what has been working, and we want to stick to that a little bit more. I think we've, as not being a really huge brand, you don't have a lot of dollars to throw around. So whenever you do something, you have to make sure your dollars count. So you don't want to throw a whole bunch of stuff at the wall. You want to make sure you're putting your best foot forward. And that's pretty much how we've done it. We've just been a little bit more cautious about spending dollars on paid stuff, where as before you may not have, like you said, you could throw almost anything up and you would sell something. Now that's not necessarily the case. So we're just a little bit more structured in as far as how we're setting up the accounts, what we're running as ads and stuff like that.
Yeah. So one question too, and this is because with a lot of our apparel brands, our media mix of, and we're getting into tactical stuff for those who like tactical stuff. Our media mix of Facebook to Google shifted pretty significantly has shifted over the last year, away from Facebook and more heavily into Google, right? And like Google Shop has just, been really powerful. And I would actually, I'm going to endorse Performance Max and say it's pretty powerful. And yeah, so a lot of media dollars. I mean, we're to the point now where some of our brands that are apparel, accessories, high SKU counts are like 80-20 Google to Facebook now. Have you found that, or are you guys still pretty heavy Facebook, Instagram? Has your media mix shifted?
We similar, but not. I wouldn't say as much. We did shift a little bit more towards Google, and we've been on the TikTok train for a good little while. We're not spending as much as I would probably like to there, but there was a shift there too. Certainly, right more when the updates happened, we did shift quite a bit to Google, and it worked pretty well. Since then, I think we've kind of came back a little bit more into the Facebook, Instagram side of things, with a little bit more going to TikTok too. We want to be everywhere. We've done Snapchat, Pinterest, pretty much you name it. We haven't actually done a lot of traditional type of stuff as far as like billboards and things like that, because we do have our storefronts, but we're looking at pushing there too.
Yeah, and a thing I always say about, like, let's say direct mail, billboards, TV. I don't poo-poo on it. It's fine. Like I'm good with that stuff. A lot of times you got to be at a certain rev level, right? Like it's kind of 15 to 20 million. And I was actually having a conversation with somebody recently about, like, we were talking about a podcast topic, like life after 10 million, right? That's about the point, 15 million, 20 million, where it's like, you start out growing some algorithms, you start out growing some search demand, and you start needing to be like, okay, how do I reach new people? Well, how do you reach people who like they won't buy online? Like they're not going to buy from an online ad, right? You a lot of times need bigger budgets for a test, right? Like if you do a TV buy, it's going to be a $10,000 buy or something like that, right? And it's going to be 10,000 minimum commitment just to make $0 sometimes,
Yeah.
So a lot of smaller brands are, can't really get into that, but yeah, I'm with you there. So yeah, kind of shifting gears here. I want to talk about what are some things that you feel like you or Blushing Brunette, you guys as a brand collectively do really well right now today, 2022. And this is, we're kind of a marketing growth focused thing. So if you can keep it there, that's perfect.
Right.
And then some things that you don't feel like you do well, or you don't feel like you do well and you feel like are worth the time. Like we should do this better.
Okay. First one is, I think we are pretty in tune with who our audience is. We tend to listen. We tend to stay present. We try to engage and ask different things to different people, different customers, to try to stay in tune with them. I think we do that well. What we don't do well, maybe a little more tactical, creative creation. And I think this might have been what actually sparked mine and your conversation. And maybe we overanalyze it sometimes. Maybe it is a little more simple. Just picture, shirt, top, dress, post it, done. We like to get a little bit more creative, or a little bit more too hands-on. Well, let's make a video. Let's do this. Creative creation, I'd say, is where we could improve.
Let me jump in, because I don't disagree with you. I think a lot of times, I'll be clear. A lot of times in fashion, it is a lot of just, here's the product, or dynamic ads, to broad audiences, works really well, right? In fashion. But let's talk about what you are. Like, let's go all the way back to the beginning and talk about this and say, like, hey, you remember when we said, like, you guys don't have any really product side advantage, right? Like a lot of the stuff you have, someone else can go get, right? So another boutique could have the exact same thing, and they could undercut you by $1, and they're going to win on the price, right? And maybe they'll win, right? The cost of traffic might get too expensive for them, but they might just be more focused on it, or like whatever, right? Like any number of things can happen where, like what you said, okay, so when you don't have a product advantage, how do you win? You have to build a brand, right? So I think at a certain point, like your lowest hanging fruit is going to be the stuff you do where it's like, hey, let's focus on what are our winning products? How would we do more stuff around that? How do we bring in more colors around that? How do we, bring in more iterations or small variations of that product so that we can advertise more of that? And dynamic ads, right? Like let's just throw the catalog out there and let people buy what they want. But I will say that when you get to a certain point, it's like, well, you got to kind of endear them to the brand, even on the way in, right? So how do you get that, we don't, and I'm not looking to do like branded ads that don't drive sales, right? So how do you strike the balance of making some creative creation, right? Making some creatives and ideating some creatives that like kind of sell people on the idea of blushing brunette versus any other place that they could buy a very similar top. And like kind of endearing them to you so that, whether they buy today or they buy tomorrow or when they buy, they're stickier, right? And I think that is actually a big thing that I've seen with fast fashion apparel brands. It's having the finger on the pulse and stuff like that, but it's like live selling just did that naturally. So how do we do that in a non-live selling environment when it's just us running ads?
Tough question, and you make a good point.
I don't think you're wrong to think about it for sure.
Yeah, it's because that's kind of hard to do. I think if you keep things kind of cohesive as far as maybe your styles, what it may be, maybe even as simple as your fonts and your colors and things like that, keep things a little bit more cohesive where everything looks and fits the same, right? So when you go from maybe an ad to a landing page or the website or the product page, you're not showing completely two different things, where people can say, okay, this fits, right? I get this. And if they see that every time, I feel like you'll register a little bit better with them.
Yeah, for sure. Into a little bit of a fun phase here, Casey, if you want to hop back on. I think we talked before. Are you a sports guy? You a sports fan?
Oh yeah. I haven't watched as much lately, working a lot, but football, basketball, and I was a big UFC guy at one time too.
Okay, UFC. So we like to do a sports analogies section. So it's either analogy from sport that you think like, man, that just applies to business, or something you learned doing sports if you did sports. I'll go first. I'll give an example because I have a new one.
Okay.
And it's really from my true sport that I did. I use a lot of basketball analogies because I'm a big basketball fan. But actually from my true sport that I did, that I've been thinking about lately. So I ran track and cross country in college at the NCAA level, a little bit professionally. And there's a book that I love called Once a Runner. That's like, it's kind of a classic, Once Runners. And there's a part in there where it sort of talks about, there's this guy who's an Olympic silver medalist and everybody comes to train with him, right? Because they're like, I want to know the secret. What is this guy's secret? And it talks about how they get like this kind of like pit in their stomach when they realize the secret is there's no secret. It's just the heart-rending process of tearing the soles of your shoes apart day by day, molecule by molecule, days on days, weeks on weeks, months on months, years on years. And that's so that's my analogy I'll go with for today is the secret is there's no secret. That's one thing I learned in sports. Gaining proficiency in anything isn't about learning some secret or learning something. It's about lots and lots of quality reps. There's no replacement for reps.
I mean, that's it. I don't know if there's a better one, really, because that's at the end of the day.
I'll jump in with one. I'll try to be try to stay relevant to this topic or this podcast exclusive, this episode. So you mentioned kind of like a change in strategy from like live selling to kind of not focusing so much on that. And when your roots really, it seems like, as I understand it, are kind of in live selling, right? So that reminds me of like a scheme change to a team where you've got this stud player. I'm a 49ers fan, right? I don't know if you're familiar, but Deebo Samuel, he's this like crazy hybrid wide receiver, running back. Just get the ball in his hands any way you can. He's amazing when he's got the ball in his hands. How we talked about like live selling brands, those are built on the back of like a superstar a lot of times, you know, like
Yeah.
like knowing your audience, being able to relate on the fly, telling them exactly what they want to hear. Just kind of there's so much going on in live selling. It really does. You know, it might be 2 superstars. You guys as a team, it's a relatively small team. And then you go through like a scheme change. And I think that's something that's scary for a lot of brands, but you guys, you know, you had a reason for wanting to do it. You knew it made sense. And I think you probably had to give yourself a little bit of leeway in learning that new playbook, adjusting to the new scheme, finding out the difference now in roles. Like, oh, I'm not so much focused on putting this thing over here on my back. I need to kind of focus over here on this other lane now. And you kind of find your new roles. And it just goes to show that a good player can adapt to a new scheme. So I would say a change of scheme is something that relates both to sports and e-commerce.
The best players are scheme independent. Yeah, I love it.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I guess I could echo off that, right? I could say, you know, you don't make the shot, you won't make the shots that you don't take. So you got to be able to shoot, right? And whether it's whatever that avenue is, if it's live selling, if it's storefront, if it's paid ads, whatever it is, if you don't try it, if you don't shoot, you're not going to make it. So you got to at least take the shot. Kobe Bryant, love him, probably my favorite basketball player of all time. How many shots has that dude missed? You don't hear about it, but it's he's towards the top.
Yep.
But he's also the greatest player of all time, or not of all time, but he's up there. And
he's up there. He's in the talk.
But you can't make the shots you don't take. That'd be my analogy.
He's like one of the 5 acceptable like goats, I think, in basketball.
Right.
Nobody's like, what are you talking about?
Well, basketball is a great analogy for a great sport for that analogy, because like I mean I play a lot, right? And the best players they just have that killer mentality, that like, you know, they don't even think about, is this a bad shot, right? Like, is this an advisable shot? Is this a high percentage shot? It's just like in their mind, I'm open, it's gonna go in. You know, like
I'm gonna shoot. That's it. Yeah, you just shoot. You just pull the trigger. And I'd say it all the time. It could be something like creative too, right? So to reference back to an ecom, you got 5, 6, 10 creatives. Just put them out there and see which one works. Because a lot of times it's the one that works is the one you might not think was going to be the best one.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't know how recurring that thought is on this podcast. It's like our probably number one. If ModCom podcast ever went down in flames, that'd be like our one little flag we leave hanging. Like, you don't know what's gonna work ahead of time.
Yeah, cool. Well, Alan, I appreciate you being on. This was a super fun episode.
Thank you guys, man. It was fun.
Yes, thank you. I'm glad we got to talk live selling finally. Like, there's so few live sellers out there.
Yeah.
And like, a lot of them aren't really into building like a lot of them are just, you know, the personal brand they're building is within their brand, right? So they don't want to be on my podcast. Like, so I'm glad you got on here and we got to talk live selling.
Well, just to kind of note on that, I think you got to think a little bit more outside. Like, you got to build the brand, and you can't just be too zeroed in on that.
Yeah, I love it. Well, thank you again for being on here. It was a super good time, super fun time. We'll have to have you back sometime to play a game or something like that. We play some games on the show.
All right.
I think that's good. Casey, say the YouTube things. Take us out.
All right. Thank you, John, for leading this interview. Thank you, Alan, for joining today as our guest. Loving this series. If you guys haven't watched other episodes of this series, go ahead and watch it. I'll try to put a card up here somewhere so you can watch this whole playlist of awesome interviews we've had lately on how to build all different types of brands. Modern Commerce, thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell icon to get notifications about whenever we drop new content onto our channel. And as always, until next time, we'll see you. Hey, ModCom, this episode was brought to you by Pencil. I'm a creative strategist at the agency that John and I work at. If you happen to be a creative strategist, or you're just having a hard time rolling out enough new creatives for testing, then I have the perfect solution for you. It's trypencil.com. Over at Pencil, the AI will help you determine what your best performers are. It'll even break it down into what elements of those best performers are helping making those ads go. And it'll also take those elements and create whole new ads for you to push live straight from their platform right over to Facebook and IG. So go to trypencil.com if you want to use this and use the promo code ModCom15 to save 15% off of any paid plan they have over there. You can always start with a free plan. Go ahead. Actually, I recommend it even, but we're confident you're going to want to upgrade as soon as you try it out. So just remember to go to trypencil.com, use the promo code ModCom15 to save 15% off of any plan. And thank you for tuning in to Modern Commerce.